It's great that you've all come here today. It's a lovely intimate session we're going to have with you all. My name is Paul. I'm the founder and CEO of Ex Ordo. Today I'm going to take you through a little presentation about 27 interviews that we have with customers and some of the things we found about the events, the scholarly events industry. So just to kick us off, we'll start with a quote. So I've always believed that the scholarly event is the true social network for academia. We talk a lot about journals, but really societies are about communities, and the embodiment of those communities coming together is actually in the actual event. I've often said that there are certain things we should never digitize, and falling in love is one of them. And the other is when two researchers meet and have a beer or a coffee over a paper. So I think it's really, the reason I say that is it's really important to recognize that the importance that events have in that social network, and it's not our role to change or to digitize or to try and disrupt that, but actually it's our role to try and make them more efficient and easier to run and cheaper, and then allow the societies to do our best, bring people together and form discussions, build great programs. Just with that backdrop and that context, I just think it's important for us as we embrace this conversation. So what I'm going to start with an introduction of myself and the company, and over to Laura to explain the process and what we learned in our journey. So I'm in the scholarly industry. I arrived here by accident. So my old professor came to me and said, "I'm running a conference. I need a system to manage the event flows. Can you help me?" My entire experience of this was when I was an undergrad and I published a paper at an IEEE conference many years ago. And the thing I will tell you is that as an Irishman, we typically are 10-20 minutes behind to the rest of. We run on Irish time a lot of the time, and unfortunately, systems don't always run on Irish time. And I was late submitting my paper, but I was thrifty and I hacked the system, got my paper in, and was subsequently accepted and published. And I'm now, that paper is on Explorer, so don't tell them. But I suppose that was my first time experience dealing with the tools that are available to the scholarly industry when coming to run events. And I suppose in a way it's become my life's work to try and improve that and try and create better products for societies and for academia in general. So I suppose that was been Ex Ordo, and we've been 10 years working with societies and working on scholarly events. As I said earlier on, we're not here to disrupt or change. We're here to partner and help societies run really efficient and delightful event experiences. So there are some of our customers I have up on the slide there. One of the ones I suppose you may recognize is SSP, and it's a great privilege for us to be able to partner with SSP. And so if you submit an abstract or you reviewed an abstract, then you did so on our platform. I hope you had a nice experience, and it's really great for us to be able to work with SSP. So just very briefly, what do we do? What does our platform do? So essentially it's a portfolio of event solutions. So everything from the collection of abstracts, registrations, payments, peer review, building up the program scheduling, and then obviously then hosting the event, whether that's in person or online, through mobile apps and discussion and discovery. So that's essentially what Ex Ordo does. Anyone remember what happened in 2020? Have you managed to block it out of your mind? Yeah, it was a crazy time. It was a crazy time for many organizations, but in particularly the event industry. So everything, people couldn't meet, events shut down, and we had customers. Effectively, I could put them into two categories. We had one set of customers who wanted to cancel everything and wait until it was all over, and then we had other customers who were looking for a solution, and they came to us desperate in one way, because if you go back to what I said about these society communities coming together in the absence of being able to come together, particularly as the pandemic went on, was a greater need. So they came to us, and the challenge they had was, how do you run a great online event? And I suppose what we did, and what we always do, is in a true partner sense, we said, well, we want to help our customers. So we rolled up our sleeves, and 3 months later, we launched a virtual conference platform and ran our first virtual conference as well. So that was an example of us being able to deploy technology quickly, solving the challenges, because prior to this, really, we'd very much focused on the workflows of abstracts and papers and peer review, very much upstream in the content process around events. And so this was us sort of pivoting, and a dramatic pivot at that. So we created a platform that could run virtual events, could do live streaming, and could host on-demand content. And I suppose when we step away and we think about, the huge level of transformation that happened, now that we have come to 2023, 3 years on from the pandemic's beginning, I guess we approached it with the same mindset. The challenges that were there then, how do you run a great online event, have changed. They're not the same challenges that societies have today. The challenges that exist are the challenges they had before the pandemic. And there's new challenges, specifically, around running hybrid events, connecting people accessibility in an accessible way around the world, around quality, around, emergence of AI, even more recently. So there's a lot more challenges. It was, in a way, it was simple. It required a massive transformation, but it was simple. And today we sort of, rather than assuming, we wanted to reset, we wanted to kind of go back to first principles. We wanted to have conversations with customers and identify what were the real challenges facing societies today around their events programs. So Laura Harvey joined us at the beginning of February on day one. I sat down with Laura. I said, Laura, I want to kick off a project and I want us to go and talk to customers. I want us to go and talk to, the society community at large, across multiple disciplines, multiple sizes, and different job descriptions and roles. And to try and build a picture as of today, what are the challenges and what are the opportunities? And essentially, as a servant to these societies, what is it that they want us to do? And so we kicked off a project, which was about three and a bit months ago. Laura led that project, and some of the findings are really interesting. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Laura and to take you through the data and the insights that we discovered along the way. So, Laura.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. So, hi, everyone. My name's Laura. I'm Chief Customer Officer at Ex Ordo. And as Paul said, I joined about 4 months ago, and we kicked off this project, which has been really interesting. It was also a really great way to onboard, thoroughly recommended. So what did we do? One of the things, like Paul said, after 2020, where a lot of customers really shared one overwhelming challenge about how do we run great events online. In the interests of moving forward as an organization and wanting to solve customer challenges, we really wanted to take a step back, listen to customers and understand what are their challenges now, which challenges do they look to service providers to help them with. And one of the ways we listened to them about that was conducting 27 interviews over 15 months. 10 of which we conducted in the last 3 months after I joined. So we did this with some scholarly societies who use Ex Ordo solutions, some scholarly societies that don't currently use Ex Ordo solutions, industry representatives, range of geographies and subject matter and things like that. And what we really were trying to get during the interviews was to hear societies speak in their own words about what their goals and activities were, what challenges they came across while they were trying to pursue those goals and activities, and what trends they were paying attention to in their marketplace. So the overall takeaway was this. We will dive into the details in a second. This is something that really struck us, and we pulled into the title of this presentation. So purpose, pressure, and persistence. So one thing that was really, really clear across all of the interviews was the level of clarity all of our interviewees had about the purpose and mission of their organizations. We spoke to, like I say, a number of different people at different levels and different roles at scholarly societies, and it was overwhelmingly clear to everyone we spoke to what the purpose of their organization was and how their activities lined up to that, which I personally thought was a real triumph of internal communication. It's not something you find in every workplace, but it came through loud and clear. Pressure was the next one. So scholarly societies feeling lots of pressure from lots of different sides, which really came through in the challenges that people spoke about. And then persistence. So there were some really great examples of scholarly organizations innovating in the face of those pressures. So we saw lots of organizations finding new audiences and new opportunities to bring in revenue or change how they work. So I'm about to show you a word cloud. The word cloud is from our analysis of the interviews. So tags and topics that came up, and it's all going to be up there on the screen. But before that, does anyone have any guesses on what you expect to see as the really big topics that came up time and again? I will stand in silence. Please just shout something out. I know a few of you, so feel the heat. Thank you, Josh. Yep, budget. The H word. Reliability, also good. One more guess. There we go. So tick, tick, tick to those of you for the guesses. So financial challenges, really common theme, hybrid, bandwidth overload. So that's staffing bandwidth, so time and stress felt by society teams. Internationalization was one we were expecting, but we weren't expecting it to come up quite so often in quite so many different areas of the interviews. DEI and sustainability featured quite heavily, as did on-demand content library, which was interesting. And you can see a couple of other themes there. It's pretty big, and these slides will be available afterwards. So moving on just to the challenges. So this is essentially a subset of the previous word cloud, but just with the tags relating to the challenges scholarly events organizers flagged to us and talked to us about. So financial challenges was a really big one. Challenges of hybrid, bandwidth, and achieving an integrated tech stack came up quite a bit as well. And then a couple of runners-up in terms of the challenges stakes. So various issues, maintaining and growing members and running scalable events and so on. So once we'd kind of tagged the interviews and we sort of played around with the word clouds and did some analysis, and the general idea was to distill all of that information into some insights from which we can then start to make decisions that would impact us as an organization. I'm going to share 6 of these insights with you here. So I'm going to start with the yellow, well, it looks orange there to me, but the kind of top middle one will go around clockwise. So perhaps unsurprisingly, for membership organizations, maintaining and growing memberships was a really core concern and came up a lot. What was quite interesting was the kind of win-win framing most society organizers talked about in terms of their events. So for a lot of them, their events was that, running a great event or delivering on events program was a key goal, but the events also had this secondary or possibly even primary role of being a membership growth lever and also a membership retention lever. So the way that they talked about their events program often was like there were 2 facets to it, which reinforced each other, which was really interesting. And moving on, one of the other things we noticed was a widespread lack of integrated systems. Now, a couple of different flavors to this. So one flavor was from the start to the finish of the event workflow, it was quite common to see organizations using a number of different providers for different stages of the event workflow and encounter challenges and having those providers kind of talk to each other to pass the data along through the stages. But the other kind of integration related issue that came up was the event workflow sitting within the wider society workflow. So things like their publishing systems or their membership systems or their finance or billing systems, often finding it a struggle to integrate their events workflow into those wider systems, which caused a bunch of downstream issues. So that was really interesting to hear. Related again, so societies having overstretched time poor teams. This came up a lot. Lots of talk about bandwidth issues, capacity issues, stress, feeling like they didn't have enough time to spend on the things they wanted to, which was elements of ensuring their events were high quality and that their delegates could be engaged and connect and things like that. And many of them cited quite complex, non-repeatable work as something that they felt played into their bandwidth issues. Talking about service providers, we were fairly direct. We asked them, what do you look for in a service provider? And the things that came up again and again, robustness, reliability, and support. Again, perhaps not super surprising, but it was very, very consistent. And then the final 2 insights. So all of the societies we spoke to were running some form of hybrid or blended events, which wasn't a surprise, but was interesting was that the majority of them were specifically actively taking a step back from fully hybrid. A number of them had kind of stepped away from it completely. The majority had moved back a little bit and offered some form of hybrid offering, but it was secondary to their in-person approach, which was very interesting given, you know, the last couple of years and how quickly that has changed. And then finally, gaining insights into events was another real need that societies talked about. So there was a lot of demand for granular event insights, like, you know, who came to what session and who connected with who and who asked a question and things like that. But also wider insights, like how many of my members go to my events and how many signed up afterwards, and how does that affect renewal and things like that. So lots of demand for insights like that, but customers facing a lot of challenges actually getting those insights was a little bit of a roadblock. So those were 6 key takeaways we took from the interviews that we did. We actually have a longer list of insights we'd be happy to share. So if you would like to take a look at that, please come to our booth 313. There's lots of other great stuff at that booth. There's English chocolate, there's an Irish Aran sweater. You get to speak to me or some of my lovely colleagues. So please come along. But yes, if you would like that longer list of insights, do let us know and we'll send that over. So what do we do with the insights? So like I said earlier, the point was, oh no, I'm back. The point was speak to scholarly societies, really try and understand the challenges that were important to them and which of those challenges they wanted to work with service providers on to solve, and to use that information to inform how we move forward as a business and what we'll be focusing on. So I'm excited to share that with you today. So the customer challenges that really stood out to us as quite significant, but also the ones that we really felt were where a service provider could add a lot of value, were staff bandwidth, integrations, and support. And I'll talk a little bit about what that actually means. So in terms of how we move forward in building out our event tech solutions and our teams, the focus will be on really powerful time and stress saving event tech, as well as building out flexible integrations. So anyone using an element of the Ex Ordo offerings will be able to integrate it with aspects of their start to finish event workflow or their publishing workflow or their society workflows, and really make the scholarly event a true sort of connected part of the research lifecycle. And then finally, dedicated support. So this is an area we're already really strong, but hearing the feedback from the societies we spoke to about how important this was when they chose vendors, when they work with vendors, and particularly when you're running an event, which is very visible, very time sensitive, having quality support. So really excited to share that with you guys. We have some other exciting news. I'm going to hand back to Paul Kay to pick back up on that. Thank you.
Cheers, Laura. So I suppose, Laura has outlined, what is it that societies want to, want from a provider. And so I guess it's one thing having a plan. It's the next thing executing on it. So as a business, we've been around for 10 years. We've bootstrapped. We've always been profitable business. We've grown on the back of great testimonials from customers. But in order to do what we want to do, once again, there's an element of transformation needed. And, there's an opportunity in front of us and one that we don't want to let pass by. So I suppose it's a real honor for me, a founder. I've been with this business 10 years to stand in front of you all in Portland, Oregon at SSP. There's good days and bad days as a founder, but today is definitely a very proud one for me because the news that we want to share is that we have secured a funding round. We've raised $3 million and we will invest this over the next 3 years in our platform, doing specifically what Laura just told you. Focusing on how can we optimize bandwidth for our customers, how can we integrate it into the ecosystem and take our place rightfully within that ecosystem, and then finally expanding our customer facing teams, particularly in North America. As an Irish based company, we're very strong in Europe, but we need to beef up on this side of the Atlantic. So that's been a sort of a great story for us. And I suppose the investment as well is a validation of all the work that we've been doing over the last while, and also the opportunity. One thing that I felt quite strongly about when we were going to do this, it's clear that innovation requires investment, and I felt that the community itself should fund this investment. So we deliberately stayed away from the VC world and the VC culture. And so I suppose that sort of brings me neatly on to a conversation that I first had with Paul Peters to my left here a little over a year ago. Paul has been a great support to me as a CEO to grow and scale the business. But I from an early opportunity, I had a vision for how we wanted to grow this business, and I shared it with Paul, and Paul was quite excited by that. So a little over a year ago, Paul came on board as our board chair, and is also a significant investor in the business as well. And I suppose I want to introduce Paul because a lot of you will know Paul. He's been around quite a while. He brings us a certain element of weight to what we're doing, and really there's three questions that I'll ask Paul. The first is why events? The second is why Ex Ordo? And the third is why now? So Paul, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Paul said, it was just about 2 years ago that we first started talking. So let's see, Hindawi was sold very end of 2020. And then my son arrived a week later. And so I decided to go be a full-time dad and didn't really expect to do anything work-wise anytime soon. But then I was introduced to Paul through a friend of a friend's dad kind of thing. It was a very random introduction, but initially it was just having a few chats with Paul and learning more about Ex Ordo and seeing what the future holds. And this was a really interesting time, sort of a year into the pandemic, and it was clear that the event space was going to change. It's not clear even now what it's going to change into, but I think the traditional approach of having an in-person event with very little technology, very little dissemination of the outputs of those events, whether they be papers or posters or videos or whatever, it's this is the core of what societies do, arguably even more so than their publishing programs. I think for societies, these events are core to what they're doing. And it's amazing how little technology exists for this space. I think people often say there's not great technology providers in the journals world, but I think in the event space for scholarly events, it's infinitely smaller options out there. And so, yeah, why now? I think the combination of the pandemic, but as well the forces pushing for a lot more of the outputs of conferences to be treated like first-class citizens in the scholarly record. I think that's a big force that's going to need a lot of support from technology providers. And as well, the growing concerns around the sustainability of flying people all over the world, having these big events. And, there's just too many events that any researcher might want to go to or see some talks from it. And they can't possibly see all of them. And so, as Paul was saying, we talked for about a year, and in that year it became clear that we needed to raise funding in order to really accelerate the company's growth. And yeah, we were both very aligned in thinking that venture capital is just not appropriate for this business. I think we are not trying to disrupt the world and take over everything. We are trying to create workflow tools that support societies in doing what they want to do. And we wanted investors that are going to understand that and not look for these, massive unicorn, flip the whole world on its head sort of businesses. And so over the past year, I've been working through people that I know from the publishing industry. So a number of the Hindawi leadership, including Ahmed and Negla, the two co-founders of the business, invested as part of this round. As well, some of you will probably know Sven Fund from Knowledge Unlatched and Reviewer Credits, and so he came on board as well. And James Douglas from Morgan Healy also was very enthusiastic about the business, and was great to have him on. And I think what we're trying to do here, as Paul said, is really at every level of the organization, from our owners through our team, get people that understand the scholarly space, that know how to work with societies. I think they are They're a lovely bunch, but they also have unique needs that need a lot of catering for. I don't think we will ever be a business where it's just a SaaS thing. You go and log on and run it yourself. Support is a huge part of what we're offering, because I think every conference is different, and the way that you configure the systems and set them up is going to vary a lot from conference to conference. So yeah, very excited now that the funding's in place. We've already started scaling up the team. There's going to be lots more hiring going on in the years ahead. And yeah, hopefully see you guys around at our booth and drinks. Yeah. Oh yeah. Anybody free this evening, 7:30 across the street, Spirit of 77. That's half an hour after the welcome reception here finishes. So if you can wander yourself across the street, drinks on us. Woo!
Cool. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, look, we're around the conference if anyone wants to come and have a chat at any stage. As I said, it's a huge proud moment for me to stand in front of you and to make this announcement. It's been working of my professional career, so it's a very exciting day for us as a company, and I can tell you there's a lot of people back in Ireland very excited as well. So anyway, come celebrate with us in Spirit of 77 this evening. I don't know if there's any questions or if we have time for questions now. I'm happy to take questions now if anyone has any. Otherwise, I'll be at the bar.